Hello and welcome to Two for the Win with your hosts, Nick and Will, where we share international insights and perspectives on things like leadership and mindset with Monday Mindset, travel and the travel business with Wanderlust Wednesday, and sports on Fanatic Friday. You can count on each episode being about 20 to 30 minutes in length, and please be sure to know that today's episode is sponsored by Dream Vacations with Nick Menard and Associates. Thank you, Nick Menard and Associates.
You're welcome. Hello, winners.
Hey, happy Monday, Nick.
Happy Monday, Will.
I'm really excited. So today, winners, we're going to jump right into it. This is a time of year where people start thinking about end-of-year reviews. If they're in a more formalized business, even if you're in a smaller business, always good to think about how to give feedback. And usually you have an event like an end-of-year review or a mid-year review, people looking for merit increases or whatever. But really feedback is something that's an all-the-time thing. So while we'll probably trend a little bit towards the end-of-year review side of things, you know, the recommendation at the forefront is feedback is always ongoing. Don't make it an event. Make it part of your culture, whether you have a small business, large business, you're working for a business, feedback is critically important, and it's good to do it ongoing. But let me pause there and pass the baton over to my friend and co-host, Nick Menard. Thoughts on feedback before we jump into it?
Yes, again, you had a great introduction about feedback, what it is. And for me, what's important is how to give feedback, how to receive feedback, and the cadence for the feedback. I know we talk about the end of year here, but like Will mentioned, feedback is a never-ending story. It can be on small things like day-to-day achievements and saying like how to celebrate those small wins and how to give feedback. Feedback doesn't have to be. A lot of time people believe feedback is more on challenges, but give feedback about positive things as well. I think it's important, and the way you give the feedback will have a lot of consequence on how the feedback will be received and how the feedback will be acted upon.
Yeah, 100%. So we're excited to dive into this, but first, get ready, winners. It's time again for quotes and quips. All right. First one is a quote from James Clear, the author. So I'll just jump right into this. The trick to viewing feedback as a gift is to be more worried about having blind spots than learning about them. Thoughts on that one?
Yes, of course. I mean, I think it's super, super important to be open for feedback and don't take it like an attack, but take it at how can I improve upon that feedback, and see, sometimes we receive feedback from people that we know we may not have a high opinion from. I mean, let's be honest, it happens, and but it doesn't mean that the feedback is not truthful or real. I think the ego is what causes a lot of time the problem. Because our ego doesn't believe that this feedback is, you want to hear it from that person, for example. But if you take a step back, you may realize that there are some merits to it. So no blindsided. You just look at it and you just see how you can improve upon that feedback.
Yeah, I want to take a moment because you touched on some things that just clearly resonated with me. And when I think back to myself in my early career, part of it was probably I was a little bit full of myself with some braggadocious, and I'm like, what is this guy trying to tell me? Like, not a lot of respect like what you're saying for. And so I would take it personal and I just dismiss it. And I don't know, just the stupidity of youth, I guess, for me and all that, but the ego, like you're saying. And as I matured as a person and also then matured in business, exactly what you're saying. It's a window, and even if I don't agree with it necessarily, the person giving it, that's their perception, and perception's reality. And if that person has responsibility over my promotability, my compensation increases, whether or not I'm going to continue working at that organization, that matters. And to your point, it's if it was a blind spot, now it's illuminated. Then now you have a chance to either demonstrate through action. I wouldn't get into an argument because that's not going to help anything. My dad used to say, I don't know. Well, I'm just going to say it how he used to say it. He was a little bit unvarnished. He used to say, there's no point in getting into a pissing contest with a skunk. You lose every time. and that's kind of how it is. Like, don't worry necessarily about arguing the point, but try to showcase examples, if not that moment in the future going forward, of how you took that feedback and applied it and how you're growing or can demonstrate something different. And maybe you don't even have to do anything different because the person just had a wrong perception, but put that in there. And I think, to your point, just detaching the personal from it and just approach it for what it is, and then work through there.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's nothing wrong sometimes when you feel attacked by a feedback. It's nothing wrong to leave the feedback aside for a day. And then the day after, when your mind is not like, all frustrated and furious.
What was that movie Inside Out when they got the angry one?
Yeah. Just sleep on it. I don't like usually using that, but it's true in this case. Sometimes sleep on it, and day after, go back and read back the feedback or listen back, depending how you receive it, and see if there is any way that you can see where it's coming from and how you could adapt it.
I haven't had luck in that in my personal relationships. It's worked in business, but getting a day and then coming back and it gets pressed in the moment.
I agree. Hey, we talked about it during one of our previous, episodes. I remember with our guest, our boss at the time, like anything that we're learning or that we're talking about in business side can, should, and could be applied into a lot of different aspects in life, not only business. So this is also like feedback is huge. But again, when it's coming for someone that we don't respect or someone too close to us, I'm not saying it's the same, but too close to us or someone that we may not have a lot of high value from or the high, like confidence that person has or best, how do you say that? Or best interest.
Interest,
it may be challenging. But again, feedback is feedback, and take it or leave it, but better to take it and see how you can improve. Because at the end of the day, it's for you, it's for nobody else.
That's right.
So
and perception is reality.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then if I can ask, you want to go to the quips first?
Well, we can stay in this theme. It doesn't matter because we can hit the quip later. What do you prefer?
No, you can go ahead.
Okay. So the quip is, got to give the credit to the source, leadership freak. Don't know who it is, but like the saying. So let me just go ahead and read it and shout out, thanks, leadership freak. Can't make this stuff up. All right. Corrective feedback offends those who feel they've arrived and motivates those who seek to improve.
Drop the mic. It's all about mindset.
Yeah.
Again, it's that. Or you think positively about, you have a positive, vision of life, and you want to always be the person who get better a little bit every day, like the saying, you don't have to be perfect. You don't seek perfection, you seek progress. Mm-hmm. And that again, how can you get better? How can I get better today, tomorrow, next week, next month? And little thing like that. Or you can be the negative person, the grumpy Walter from Jeff Dunham, and then you just don't want, you just take everything negatively. So I love that quip actually.
I don't know if I ever told you this, but I bought one of those little miniature Walters, and he pressed the button and he says the sayings for my youngest son Oh, it's fantastic. So I used to go in his room and I'd press it and be like, dumbass.
Father of the year.
Yeah, I know. Parenting 101. Yeah. But you got to have thick skin.
So funny.
Yeah, but that is funny. I actually really like that little toy.
So what do you think about the quip?
Oh, I agree. I think, again, I'll apply it back to personal because I feel like, we're all on a journey of continuous improvement. I think there were times where, especially early, when I lived in Vegas and I had some early success doing different things, and you start, at least in my case, I started thinking, hey, you know what? Like I got this, and somebody would give me, I remember there was a company I was working for, and the guy was based out of Anaheim, the corporate office. And I had a satellite office in Vegas, and I used to open up satellite mortgage brokerages in like Topeka, Kansas, with no offense to people in Topeka, Kansas, but what a boy. That won't be on our Wonderless Wednesday. and Nebraska and some other places. I'm like, oh. Yeah, but I was at a point where they kept raising the internal prices, and these branches could use the corporate money, or they could go to an outside source and use other banking money. And he was complaining because the applications were down for internal, even though the business of those offices were increasing because they kept using other, like Bank of America Countrywide back then and stuff like that. And he was critiquing me. And he's like, you're not doing enough to get them to use the internal. I'm like, I said, I'm not doing enough. I said, you keep increasing the pricing. And I was 25 at the time or whatever. So I, all bold or whatever. And we got into like a heated argument. And the fact of the matter is, he was right. I mean, I was doing stuff, but it wasn't enough. I needed to do more volume, to try to make up for the fact that we were going to be getting less applications because of the price increase. But I fought him on it, and it actually came to a point where we parted ways. And now the silver lining is, then I started my own mortgage brokerage, and that went really well. So, but
there we go.
But the point being, I didn't take the feedback well. The situation escalated, and it escalated to a point where we were like, that's it. And the guy I was working for at the time was one of my good friends, and it just devastated him because he's like, why would you get into it with this guy? And I'm like, I called him some choice descriptive words, and then I opened up my own mortgage brokerage. So
always find the good in the bad.
Yeah. But the fault was mine. He had a point. I may not agreed with it, but I definitely could have handled it differently. But I thought I had arrived, and I'm like, who are you to try to like? I opened up all these offices, and the fact of the matter is, if I would have been focused on growth, I would have took that and I would have approached it very differently. So
yeah, it's good for the winners here listening to understand that we are not perfect. We are human, and we go through growth in our leadership journey. And it's good to be able to reflect back on time where we made mistakes and, be vulnerable enough to share that, because we all have those moments that you just mentioned. But you're growing, and you keep growing now because you realize what happened, and you don't want to make the same mistake twice. And I think it's important. What do you think about as mentioned earlier, the delivery, like how you deliver a feedback? Can you tell our winners about a time maybe where you can choose, or you deliver a feedback, or you receive the feedback that could have been received totally differently, or could have been given differently based on the situation, and the why you think it could have been different?
Yeah. So majority of my career has been spent more in leadership positions than not. And that started at a very early age. I got my first leadership position working retail at 19. And so I think when I was early in my career, I did treat feedback like an event. So like, there were scheduled times where we were supposed to give feedback, and I adhered to those scheduled times. And then other times it wasn't like a consistent thing. It wasn't part of the culture. I didn't really employ it that way. It was just more, here's the tasks we have to do. Let's go ahead and do it, and not give feedback along the way. So, so when I had a situation where I had to give constructive feedback, and actually I was informed by my company that I had to fire this person. Like, and it didn't even come from me. It came from up above. And this person was completely shocked. and she just totally lost it, like broke down crying, and I was even getting emotional because she was just like, because it came out of left field, and that was an early lesson to me that I did her a disservice, because if I had given her feedback along the way, she could have had a chance to course correct. And it was a striking lesson to learn as a early leader, a 19-year-old, but it stuck with me. And I think what I'd like to share with the listeners is, don't make feedback an event. If you have it as an ongoing part of your culture, regardless of the size of the business or the company you're working for, if you set clear expectations, if you check in and use empathetic leadership, so you get to understand the person and understand what's happening with them, good and bad, however they're producing, and then you're giving that regularly. It won't be a big shock if it's constructive feedback. B, they'll know that you're coming from a genuine place of trying to help them, and so it'll be received a lot better. And C, you'll probably help the productivity improve faster because you're giving that feedback along the way. So to me, that was one that was a really one that stuck with me for a long time and put me on the path of getting away from feedback as an event.
That's a good one. Again, that's reflecting about things that could have done better and part of the journey. I love the fact that you mentioned in beginning of the show, and also now during this example a couple of times, a culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's key. If your organization, your teams, your region, whatever you have in your own business, has a culture of sharing, receiving feedback, celebrating small wins, things of that nature, people will be a lot more open for those feedbacks. Mm-hmm. And they will even ask for it. And I think that when in some organization I was part on, I believe that was one of the success that we had, is the fact that when people start asking you for feedback, me as a leader, I feel like we are getting somewhere. Mm-hmm. Because when people want to get better, and it's based on the quotes and quips that you mentioned earlier, we are so much further, because I smile and I'm like, look at you. You had difficulties at first receiving some feedbacks, mm-hmm. and now you're asking for it. Why? The culture, the trust factor is there. When people trust you to actually, share what's happening in whatever situation that you may be in your day-to-day job, well, you win, because they only want to improve. Mm-hmm. And as a leader, that's all you want. People who have the mindset, who are where you want them to be, meaning you want them to be seeking for progress nonstop. You want them to be craving to get better. You want them to collaborate together within teams, like between colleagues and peers, because, sharing best practices and things mm-hmm. like that. And again, everything starts with culture. And a lot of people still to this day roll eyes or, believe that culture, oh my God, here this guy gets there again with the culture speak. But it is so important.
Yeah.
And I'm shocked that to this day, I still hear people or region who do it because it's a checkbox. Mm-hmm. But I don't believe that a lot of time needs to be put into building that strong culture. Once the culture is there, you need to maintain it. Mm-hmm. But so many great things will happen. When people have the right mindset, are in the right culture, people who are struggling will get up a lot faster as well, because mm-hmm. they're around positive people, around positivity, around people who want to get better. They don't want to be left back.
Right.
Like the train is moving, or you go on or you stay in the rail, like we mentioned a couple of times. So yes, I think that the culture in the feedback as well is such a huge element.
I agree. And I think, as you're sharing this, I was reflecting back a couple of weeks ago when you talked about when you first, came over to my division and you took over that team. The people were the same, but the expectation setting, the belief, the vision, and then the feedback along the way and the guidance, transformed that team and made it a top producing team with the same people. But it's because, to your point, you established the culture, you clearly articulated the vision, and then you gave feedback along the way so they progressed. And I remember one of your first new teammates that you had, they were looking to exit her out of the business. I mean, she wasn't even getting through the training regimen. And then you worked with her, role played, gave feedback, she passed it, and then she became one of the top performers in the company. And so, big thing. Another thing that you were on the periphery of, and I know you're a big believer in, when you move away from feedback as an event, and to your point, sometimes people are thinking about, it's about the constructive feedback all the time. But actually, it's about celebrating small wins. And I know you're really passionate about it, so I want to toss that back over to you. But do you have an example that you could share of, how incorporating the celebration and intentional appreciation of people's efforts with the small wins led to a big outcome?
Yeah, absolutely. We are in a service organization in leadership. It's something that it's very well known in sales, small wins. You see the bell, the famous bell. You close a deal, bing, 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 bing. Everybody celebrate, blah, blah, blah. But it's for more than just sales. And that's what I wanted to bring. And that's what happened with us. We had that bell as well for every time we had we secure a call, or we had a call with a very difficult client to talk to. We just celebrate that as a team. But what does it do? A few things. First, everybody love to be recognized. I don't care who it is. I don't care if you said, I don't care about being recognized. You do. And who more people say they don't, who more they are the one that actually need it the most. So it gives you a boost of confidence, of trust. People see you like positive, like successful. That's number one. Number two is the people around. Once you celebrate in a team setting, in this case, like a success, you definitely have the team like going around and wanted to know how that person was successful on this small win of just getting a hold of someone or things of that nature, engaging someone who is hard to engage. Everybody want to know how they did it. So by giving that kind of feedback, you can give feedback one-on-one, you can give feedback in a team. But here the example is how to give a high five, like during a team setting about something that someone did. The third is the culture. You keep increasing the culture because people want to be around the team like that. I remember you can have two types of people who see at this. You can have some who just take it negatively. Why? Because they are jealous. Jealousy is a big part of it, personal life, business-wise, anywhere like that. Or you can have people from other teams or the region who may hear that, who will be motivated by it. So you also improve the whole organization, not only your team alone. So this is an example I wanted to share with the winners. Like, if you want to do quick win celebration, do it in front of people so everybody understand what's happening, how they did it, and it's only gonna motivate everybody and bring the culture up. So that's something I really wanted to share on this episode because we tend to be worried about the consequence of giving a feedback in front of everybody, or should I give it individually? I think there are time for each, but in this example is giving for the whole team at the same time, but give for one person within the team to celebrate the person and us as a team. But what you mentioned earlier, I really want to touch back on this very quickly about the fact that, in the sense of giving a feedback as a celebration. If you have a culture of feedback, when you are at the end of year, because it was what we talked about in the beginning, or mid-year.
Oh, like an event, not making
it's an event.
Yeah.
So people think, we need to ask feedback because it needs to be, in the feedback of the company for the mid-year or the end of year review. I always I always wonder, why should I be doing that? Because we have a culture of feedback. So it doesn't come as a, I'm wondering, who am I sending this? Because I always ask and give feedback during the whole year.
Yeah.
So I think that it's important. If when you ask feedback is the only time that you receive and give, there's probably a problem in your region or in your team. So try to have that culture of giving and receiving. Apply the feedback, because it's something to receive it, but it's another thing to actually apply on something. And then share the success based on the feedback. And then you will have people a lot more open to have those kind of celebration, like we mentioned, and be more open for the feedback because of the culture and because of the style of team mindset that you created.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, I was thinking about when you're celebrating small wins, and I call it intentional appreciation. One of the things I did when I came to the division I'm part of now a couple of years ago is I really emphasize what I call intentional appreciation. And, we started by, I was like, pick somebody in your region, one person every Friday, give them feedback, email, copy me on it, and I'll piggyback on it. But the key is, what, in my opinion, don't just send an email that says, hey, you're doing a great job. What do you do with that? You have to be specific. So I would ask my leaders, make sure it's specific. It doesn't have to be War and Peace. It could be a couple sentences, but like, hey, I saw how you interacted on this client interaction, and it helped change the way the client perceived something, and they went in a different direction. Perfect, great, and then copy on it, because the specificity is important so that somebody knows exactly what they can do with it, what worked, or if it, you wouldn't do constructive feedback like that where you blast it out, but it's definitely a one-on-one thing. But if you did give it one-on-one, be specific. Don't just say you're not doing a good job. You know what I mean? Like, you have to say, like, what is the standard? What does good look like? And there's a acronym, or not an acronym, but a saying about like show, share, observe. So show what is good looks like, share it, and have them do it, and then observe it and do that. The other thing is, there was a leader we both worked for who used to give the open feedback. And it was the first, so we would be in a room of 150 people, and he'd have a couple of the senior leaders give their presentations, and she would give the feedback live right after the presentation. We used to do it where we'd go back into a room with just the presenter and a couple of us, and it wouldn't be in front of everybody. I have to admit, at first, that was extremely uncomfortable for me. I was like, holy smokes. And you're seeing like some really senior people, because she was one of the first ever female officers in the Marine Corps. So just think about that, paint that picture in your mind, Winners. And she was one of the most phenomenal leaders I ever worked for, but holy smokes, it was not for the faint of heart. And she would give that feedback. I was like, oh, sweet goodness. Like, some of it was crunchy, but it worked, and people responded to it. And you know what? They definitely brought their A game, and they definitely got thick skin. So when they got that feedback, it wasn't about bruised egos. It was just, okay, this is what I know I need to work on, because it's not meeting her expectations. And she made that very clear.
Absolutely. And the last word about this, I remember exactly who you're talking about. And but something also, the reason why it was uncomfortable, definitely for me, that was my first experience, in this region. I was literally there for a week. The first time I was in the same room, like, for that kind of feedback, and it was challenging at first. Like, oops, what's coming here? But that's also for me because of the people knew that she was like that, but the people knew that no other leader will have your back as much as she will have your back.
Very true.
So there is a trust there, like, yes, I will not take gloves to give feedback, and I will give feedback to senior leaders in front of everybody else, even junior people. But if someone get in the way of any of her people, she will fight for you.
Yes.
And I think that's important. And that's the reason why she was so successful all the time. It's because of that mentality that comes from the Marine Corps. So yeah, you need to have both. You cannot have both ways. You cannot be the person who's scared. The scare approach is not something that I believe in. But when you can be those two aspects that I just mentioned, that's where you win the team, because they know it's for your own good. Maybe the delivery is different that some people may like, but she means well. And I think that's important.
Yeah, shout out Michelle. Won't say her last name, but phenomenal leader. But definitely not for the faint of heart. But you're absolutely right. She had your back 1,000%. You could always count on her. Awesome. Well, all right, winners. There's another episode in the books. What do you know? So hope you enjoyed it, gleaned some nuggets from it. We'll revisit this topic again. There's so many things we didn't touch on that we could have. If there are some things that you want us to touch on, again, please send us a message, either respond in the comments on the platform you find us, or send us an email, TwoForTheWinPodcast@gmail.com. But we want to hear from you, and we're happy to build these in. Please make sure to join us for Wanderlust Wednesday, and looking forward to that. So always a pleasure, winners. Take care and be well.
Bye.